welcome you guys to part one of AI and automation, Photoshop made easy. And we are going to go over Photoshop's generative AI, the remove tool, some actions, and just a couple things that might help you guys in your editing process. Not only can you do generative AI, but you can also create an action to use generative AI and do it in a click of a button. So pretty cool stuff. Photoshop just came out with a new update last week. So some things, I want to say most things, but some things that were in the beta version of Photoshop are now in Photoshop 2025. So if you were already using the beta version, you might be familiar with a few things. And actually, there's another beta that's out, I believe, and there's a couple other things that are coming out in that. So some of you might be familiar with the move tool or the remove tool, excuse me. And the cool thing about the remove tool is you can remove people or you can remove wires. So this was an image that came like this, and this is just Adobe stock. So I just have chosen to pick some of these images. This was another one, and I removed her into that, and then I combined this photo and that photo to make this photo by using the remove tool. I'll show you that. Another thing is I did the wires and cables. Here's some wires and cables, and I removed them with the remove tool. So I'll show you how to do that. And then I combined an action with the remove tool, and I'll show you how I did that. This is how I removed these cables here, and then I actually recorded the whole entire thing as I did the generative remove, and I basically just played the action to remove the cables on this one. So I'll show you how to do that and combine those two. All right, so let's pick one we haven't used. How about let's use this image here. Okay, so remove tool. All right, so here's our actions. Let's just get rid of our actions for a sec. And again, feel free, any questions, just put them in the Q&A or please put them in the chat or direct to me, or just feel free to turn your mic on and ask me anything you want. I will go as fast and as slow as we need to, so please just feel free to interrupt me at any time. I've been to Cuba, and I know there's some wires and cables in Cuba in certain parts, so I just went to Adobe Stock, got an image from Cuba, and I'm going to remove these cables with a click of a button. So in here, if I hover over this, this is the remove tool. And if I click and hold, I will see different options, and the shortcut is a J. A J if you have this one selected, remove tool. If you're in any other tool, it will go to this because you have it selected here. So this is the remove tool. Okay. Here's the healing brush, which you might be familiar with, and the remove tool is within that. Okay, so you can click on this button up here. This is find distractions. Now I have generative AI on, and I could show you an image where I did AI on or off. There was absolutely, I didn't see a difference, but we'll see. Basically, it's find distractions. It's going to find the wires and cables and remove all of them. Now, depending on your image, if they're distracting or not distracting, maybe you want the character of Cuba to shine through in your image. But if that cable is maybe going through somebody's head, or maybe it's on the border of your image and it might be problematic for your print, then you can easily use this tool. You don't have to clone, you don't have to heal, you don't have to do anything. Go grab, a favorite beverage, come back, and it will be done. It's pretty awesome. I've been using it since this new update, and it's pretty cool. So probably one thing I should have done, well, tell you what, I made a mistake. but I'll let this process and then I'll show you what I would have done. So I just worked on the image when I should have made a blank layer here. And then since sample all layers is on, I should have been working on that layer because now this is a destructive process, which I've always taught, and I do teach that it should be a non-destructive process. But by doing it this way and not creating a new layer, this is a destructive process. But there's a couple things you can do. Okay, so this takes a bit. So I will just stop talking. Anyone have any questions so far? Maybe I can get to Nancy's question from before. Layers are what history is in a sense in Lightroom. However, you can go a lot deeper with Photoshop than you can in Lightroom. So there are, speaking to which, just a second, I'll get to our image, but we started our first webinar, I think, with Photoshop Made Easy. It was just setting up your workspace. And then a couple webinars in, we started working with layers and masks and stuff like that. So, but also as well, anytime you guys want to meet with me, one-on-one free sessions on Zoom, please feel free. Click the link, mckennapro.com/coaching. All right, so we did get rid of all of the, here's how it was, here's how it is, and you can easily see the, what that looks like. Now, if I were to do anything, if I, like I said, I should have, so if I went back to the beginning, and I could, there's a different process, but I'm not gonna get into that now. But if I would have done this correctly, and how I always do it, is to create a new layer down here. And then since sample all layers is on, then I would go into find distractions and it will do the same thing. Okay. So, and then I say wires and cables. I'm not going to run through it because you saw how long it took. So we're not going to waste our time. But that's how you would do it. It would do the same exact thing if sample all layers is on, because it's going to take all the information and go through all of the layers and understand them and remove these cables, but it's going to put it on this layer. And when you turn it off and on, you'll see the cables removed, or if you turn it off, the cables will be back on. And I'll bring up an image where I showed that. This remove after each stroke, I keep it off because when I want to paint something, like this remove, I could just come in here and paint. I keep it off because when this is on, it's basically going to generate what you painted. And I usually use it, it's already trying to do something. So when I use it for people mainly. Okay, so when I get into this, I believe it's this one. So PSB, okay. So let's open this up. Now, I said I was going to show you what this image was. Okay, now these are the cables, and it's kind of like a cooking show, right? I did this before to show you so it wouldn't take so much time, because when we got to get through a bunch of things, we're not going to have to, we don't want to wait for Photoshop to actually run through and do its process. So I did it with generative AI on, and I did it with generative AI off. So here's the difference. And this is what I was saying before. This is the original image. I created a new layer just by going down to this button here. This is our new layer button. Click that. That created a new layer. And then I went through my remove tool, clicked on find distractions, and did cables and wires. And this was with generative AI off. Okay, so that was selected for this layer. I don't want that on. And then I did the same exact thing, and I could just turn this off. I did the same exact thing. This is the original image. Created a new layer by going to this icon down here, and then turned JI or generative AI on, and I wanted to see the difference. So just hypothetically, whenever you're in Photoshop, my thought is to just click all the buttons and not all at once, of course, but click all the buttons to see what they are, to see what they do, and you'll learn. Maybe you can always just not save your work or an image. You can download an image or a stock image or one of your older images or whatever, but go through, kind of click around here and see what it does. And that's exactly what I did. So I wanted to see the difference between generative AI on or generative AI off, right? So this is generative AI off, and this is generative AI on. So is there a difference? So that's on, or that's on, that's off. I don't really see a difference in this. Maybe you do. Yeah, a little bit. You can kind of see it in here. So very slight differences, but when you do use AI, it's going to prompt you to read this. And these are the terms, right? So these terms, just go through and read these. And this is just from Adobe and their usage. Okay. So that's the remove tool with cables and wires. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. I'm just not going to save that. Let's get back into what I did here. Let me find the PSD or PSB. Where are you? This is a little trickier, and this is my work that I've done here. Okay, so this is what I did, and I'll just run through. Okay, to turn off all layers except for this one, hold the Alt button on a PC or Option on a Mac. Okay, so I just went ahead and destructively removed her, and then I think I fixed a couple things maybe on that. I created a mask around her, used the Shift key to remove or put an X so you can see what is on that layer on the mask. And again, we've gone through masking and how to use masking, but just to remember, refresh our memories, this little button right here, that's to add a mask to a layer. You have to have that layer selected, click on this button, and it will add a mask of the selection that you have. Okay, so I removed the background. We'll just put a mask on the background. And then what I did is I think I fixed her hair with a curve and use saturation and that kind of thing. But what I did with this image is I found the person and removed it. And then I added the other photo to it. Okay. There are a couple different ways that you can get two images onto the same document. And I'll show you one way. So let's go to File, then we'll go to Scripts, and then we'll load files into Stack. Okay. So load files into Stack. We'll go into here. We'll browse. Let's see. I believe it's this person and her. And then let's say, okay. So these two files will get loaded into one file, right? They're both JPEGs and they'll get loaded as layers. Okay. So any questions on that? I know I'm kind of moving a little fast. If I am moving too fast, slow me down and I'll repeat it. The cool thing about doing what I just did, I went to File, I went to Scripts, I went to Load Files in Stack, and then pick the two files I wanted as layers. The cool thing about doing that is it has the file name as the layer. Okay. Now you can always just rename it. You can just click on this, and this is, person, and this is background, right? And you know that this is the person and that's the background, right? So if that's the background, now I'm going to create a new layer, and in the remove tool to find distractions, I'm going to find the people. Now this is going to find the person here, and then I can remove it. The thing that I found tricky about this image compared to the other one is that it didn't necessarily do it completely well, right? And you can use generative AI to fix this as well, right? So it didn't find it. But what you can do, here's just a lasso. You can go around and I can generative fill it, right? So it didn't find what I wanted it to find. Now, if this doesn't pull up, like say this is hidden and you don't see that, you can right click on here and there's generative fill here. It's going to be the same exact thing. Or go up to Window and then say Contextual Taskbar, and that will pull it back up. All right, so that was Window, Contextual Taskbar. Make sure it's checked, and that is this Contextual Taskbar. So you can do a couple different things, masking and adding a few adjustment layers and that kind of thing. So generative fill, I'm going to say remove person, and this is where you type in prompts. Okay, so remove person. Sometimes if you just select it and actually just hit generate, it will know what you want because so many people are doing this and AI is pretty smart. And it knows if a person's selected, most likely you want to remove that person. Now, I've done it with this image. It did it okay, pretty good. And you have different options here, right? It created some rows. So you're like, well, this is pretty good. But the cool thing about this new Photoshop, which was in the old beta, is you can click on these little three buttons here and you can generate similar. And you could say, yeah, it's pretty good. And you can rate this and all that kind of thing. And that helps Adobe understand that they're doing things correctly. If all of us say, no, it's terrible, Adobe's probably going to rethink their way of generating our image. So just remember those three little dots. So it's going to create, now it thinks we want some rows. Well, you're like, well, actually, this is the best. So it created this file, this folder here, and that's your generative file. Okay, this was got rid of our shadow, which we can just leave, and there's that as well. Now, let's say we want to get rid of this. So now we can just select this and then hit generative fill, generate again, and most likely it's going to get rid of that and then just blend it all in. And then we can add our person. So sometimes the remove tool doesn't remove the person, but you can use generative fill with this. So there it is. Now we're good. Now we can take our person here and let's use our remove tool. Let's actually do select subject, or actually let's remove background. So see this down here. Let's just say remove background. And voila, there you go. So there's all kinds of intricacies that we could get into because it's not perfect, right? Like if we zoomed in here, maybe our feather is not as accurate as we wanted to. Maybe the hair isn't so blended. And actually this part was in the photo itself, but maybe some of these hairs aren't as good. Well, you can come in here with the eraser tool. I just clicked on the E. And you can see that if I move this over, if I hover over, see this E right here? So any tool corresponds to a letter on your keyboard. So, and then you can come in, I didn't do that right. You make this bigger with your brackets. You can right click your hardness, lowered, increased, whatever you want. And then just clean some of this up. Maybe you're like, you know what? I don't even like any of this. So let's just clean this up. So again, I'm using a Wacom tablet. Some of you know that I've been using these tablets for ever, and I really enjoy the accuracy and the precision that a Wacom tablet gives you. So I'm just feathering it, and then what I can do is create a curve just for this area here. So I'll darken what I think might help that area. And then let's say about there, I'll make the mask black. Most of you know how to do that. I filled with background layer. And again, those of you who don't know how to do that, just go ahead and either set up a coaching session with me or watch a previous webinar, and you will find out how easy it is. And if you went over, let's just link this mask to that layer and it stays within this mask, right? There's your mask. Or backslash, there's your mask, right? And then you can adjust your curves accordingly. Like maybe that is better, right? So what was original was this, and then we took it into that. So within 5-6 minutes or something, this is done. What you used to have to do, you used to have to make a path. There's so many. I rarely make, whoops, sorry about that. I rarely make paths anymore unless I want to be very precise. But and then in here, if you double click, let's see, where am I? Oh, mask and layer. Yeah, selected mask, color range. So here you can get into even more fine tuning with these masks and that kind of thing. So it helps with your masks. So that is a little bit of the remove tool, a little bit of generative AI, and combining a couple photos using the scripts on import. That was scripts and load files into stack. Any questions on that so far?
Eric, you mentioned you're using a tablet of some type I'm not familiar with. Could you explain that in a little more detail?
Yeah, so I can just hold it up. So this is a Wacom tablet. And so I have a pen so that instead of a mouse, and I have like an ergonomic mouse just in case, the tablet is more like a pen. So I kind of think about, well, you know how it started is I had carpal tunnel from retouching photos so much. And I had carpal tunnel because when you're using a mouse, your arm is twisted, which twists your muscles in your forearm, which is not ergonomic. So it's you're actually straining the tendons on your arms by using the mouse and even a keyboard. So since I got carpal tunnel, I got an ergonomic mouse, but then I discovered actually the Wacom tablet is much better because it's actually like writing a pen. So the tablet helps because it maps your monitor, meaning that the top right hand corner of your tablet is the top right hand corner of your monitor. If you have two monitors, you can split up the tablet into both. So the left side of your tablet is your left screen, the right side of your tablet is the right screen. So you never have to, you know how you have to like move the mouse a million times to get where you want to go? That since it has mapping, you just move this. It's like a sheet of paper, to go to the right hand corner. You just move up to the right hand corner, and it's always going to be that right hand corner, always going to be the left. So if you want to be accurate when it comes to finding this spot here or finding that spot there, you simply just think about it as a piece of paper. So what I'm using here is pen tablets. And then I'm using an Intuos Pro, this one. And then I have a large one in my studio, and then I have a medium size here at McKenna. So medium, large, and small. There's benefits to both. We can get into that in a coaching session, but they are very accurate. I've been using these for many, many years. Absolutely love them. And yeah, so small, medium, large, different benefits for each one, depending on how many monitors you have and that kind of thing. So Intuos Pro from Wacom is what I'm using there. All right, so back to any other questions with this image. Okay, I'm just going to close and not save, and close and not save. And okay, so that's the remove tool. I went through this one. This was the before and after. Let's go to the before. All right, so here is another generative thing that Photoshop came out with just recently, which is pretty cool. This is called Generative Expand. Okay, so in the crop tool, you just hit the C key for crop. That brings this up. Say you want this format, right? But what's happening is you want a little bit down below. Okay, so let's just move. Let's say that's your shot, right? Maybe that's your shot right there. All right, so generative expand, and that's this button right here. So generative expand, whenever you go out of your existing pixels, like even this, we could say there, that's your image. You're like, I want that image. It looks perfect. It's 16 by 9, but I need extra space and it's too close to a foot and all that kind of thing. Hit this button right here, generative expand, and just hit generate. And it literally will expand to fit your crop. Now, generative AI, and there you go. And again, it gives you options if you didn't like those options. Maybe let's say you like, so in the right, it put in like almost like, yeah, that curve is going down, anticipating the crosswalk, or the curve continues. So whatever you like, right? And then this created something over there. Maybe this is best. Okay. And just to show you the tool of find distractions and remove people. Now, let's see. Oh, so it doesn't want it because I wasn't on the correct layer. So I just want to show you this because I didn't show you from before, but it's going to remove the people. So that's the other feature. So now you can say yes or no, right? So you can hold the Option key on a Mac or Alt on a PC and say, I want to keep this guy. So let's not include him. Actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to add him. So you come in and you see this plus and minus. I'm just going to add this guy. So it works best when you add a little bit of background. You're generous with this. And again, the brackets, you can reduce or increase the size of your brush. And you're like, actually, this guy too, but I'm not sure. I think these people were added from the generative AI layer. So I don't think that's going to work over here. So let's just, for simplicity's sake, let's get rid of that. But I want these people out. So and then hit the check or just hit enter and it'll run through and get rid of those people. So that is the remove for the people. So just want to hit that. And then the expand, generative expand is on the bottom. So that is how you use that. So should get rid of them in a second. Okay, so there you go. Now, that is pretty cool. Any questions so far? Actions. Now let's pick this image that I've already done, but let's just undo all the work. Okay, so it's a cable car. You know, it's a, there's some cables up here, and if I showed you what it was, okay, so there, fine. All right, now what we can do is actions. Now we understand that you can use this remove tool to get the get your cables out of the way by going up here, find distractions, remove the wires and cables. But what if, hypothetically, you had a bunch of these images from the same location and you want to create an action so that you don't have to go through all these steps all the time and wait. So here you go. This is cool. All right, so actions. Some of you guys know actions, but how about combining generative remove or AI stuff with actions? So I created this one here, but I will create a new one because we're doing it here live. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to add a curve layer, saturation layer because I want to maybe saturate it later. I also want to heal it, and I also want to remove the cable. So I want to do those four things. Okay, before doing anything, I have my background locked, just opened an image, and now I'm going to create this action. So in your action panel, just like Windows, you have actions. Make sure that's checked or you won't see it. So let's turn it on again. There it is. Okay, now to record an action, you hit this plus button. So new action. I'm going to give it a name. Let's say wires and cables, but I'll change it just slightly from the previous one that I did here, but record. So anything you do from here on out, it's going to do once you hit play. So actions are basically a series of tasks that are recorded and that can be played back. So anything in Photoshop can be repeated by a click of a button, which is this play button over here, once you hit stop. So you create new, you give it a name, it automatically hits record, and whenever you're done, you hit stop. And then when you're ready to play it on a different photo, then hit play. Okay, so this is what we'll do. So anything that we do here is recorded. Okay, so I'm going to double click to unlock it. Just say okay. I'm going to create a new layer here, and this is my wires and cables layer. And then I'm going to create another layer, which is healing. Then I'm going to create a curve layer, but put it into luminosity mode and not touch it because each photo might be different, so I'll just leave it like that. Then I'll create a hue and saturation layer and put it into color. I'm not going to desaturate it or increase any saturation yet because I don't know how the other photos might do. But I am going to put them all into a group, and that's just this button right here, or Command or Control G, and this is retouch maybe. And I'm doing all this because when we play it, you'll see that it's going to name these all the same. And let's say I want this to be a certain color like green, and maybe I want my curves to be yellow. I don't know, right? And all of this to be uh, magenta, let's say. Oh, okay, never mind. It overrode. Let's undo that and let's just leave it like that. Okay. So anyway, and how I got there, I was just right clicking, going to color if you haven't been there yet. Okay. So I'm still recording. Everything's recording. Now I'm going to go to my wires and cables. And now I'm in my remove tool, find distractions, wires and cables. Now it's going to find all the wires and cables and it's going to get rid of them. Now, this is just hypothetical because obviously this object needs these cables to function, and without these cables, this thing wouldn't go. So, but it's a good example of there's a lot of wires and cables, so let's remove them, right? Let's see how well Photoshop performs. Takes 30 seconds depending on your processor, and we just have to learn patience a little bit sometimes. Any questions while this is doing its thing? Nancy says, just a comment, watch for shadow of wires on some buildings. Yes, true. And that you can generative fill, take the lasso or the remove tool and literally just paint those and remove those. Okay, so it got rid of our wires and cables. And I think that's probably good for now. Let's hit stop. Okay. So stop on the actions. That is, that's our action right there. And you can, this drop down arrow right here. You can see everything, set background, make layer, and this is everything that I did. If you don't like something, you can turn it off. However, if the next step is dependent upon this um, little, movement, like if you did so, you made a layer and then you did something on that layer, then the action is not going to run because you turned it off. And this is how you turn it on. This is how you turn it off. This red check just means that that all of them are not all turned on. So just take note. You can purposefully, maybe you saved it as a JPEG as the last step, and you want to just turn that off, and then you click up here, and then you run it, and then you hit play. So that very last step won't complete. Doesn't matter, but if something up here is turned off, and maybe this is dependent upon that one that's turned off, then the action won't complete. It'll stop the step before. So just run through and make sure. And whenever you buy a package of actions or batches or scripts or something like that from somebody else, like there's lots of photographers that sell actions or brushes and that kind of thing. And they, if you ever have an issue with them not working correctly, it's because the layer where they started from is either named different or is not selected. But those instructions are usually like a background locked layer because once you unlock it, it's layer 0, but it might be, you might have other layers on there. So make sure that your background layer, usually the instructions say start with the background locked layer selected, and that would be this one if it had a lock and just said background on it. Have that selected, excuse me, and then push play on the action that you want from that package. Okay, let's say this is our action. Now, take note of all that stuff that we did, and let's go grab a different photo and apply it, right? So I did this one here, but I'll redo it. So this is the original image. Okay. Now here you go. Now let's just put these window arrange maybe two up vertical maybe. Okay. So one has, that's the action that we did. This is hasn't been done yet. Okay. So all we have to do is hit play, and it will remove all of the cables and create all of those layers if I did it correctly. Okay, so that is selected. Now, if you have this where it's down, don't have it selected here, have it selected here. I found that works always better. And then I just, to save some space and confusion, I'll just close it. So then hit play, and it should run through the best. It should run through it all, and let's hope for the best, is what I meant to say. Okay, so it created, you can see how fast that worked. It created all of those things in a split second. The wires and cables, the healing, and it named it. It color coded it, and hopefully it's going to color code the yellow and green. Maybe it's just the removing is holding that part up, but it should turn to green and yellow. And yeah, created a hue and saturation. We'll go through it. Hue and saturation should be in color mode. Curves should be in luminosity. It unlocked the background layer. It created a group, named it retouch, and it should remove all cables. So say you went to Cuba and you have 50 photos of Havana and you're like, I hate all these cables, then just create an action and run through it. Or maybe there's something else in your shot. Maybe you photographed something and there's a bunch of people in the background. Well, you can do the same exact thing. Instead of doing the cables, just do the people. But there's so many different things, and even to simplify it, I know this is like a kind of advanced thing that we just combined. I just taught you actions by actually doing a generative AI in the action. But if we just wanted to hit record and create a curve adjustment, as simple as that, you can just hit record, go to create a curve layer at that semicircle down here, hit a curve layer, create a new one, and then hit stop on your actions. And anytime you want to just have an action to create a curve layer, all you have to do is go to your actions that is possibly named curve or whatever you named it as. And then just click of a button, you have a whole new curve layer in the mode that you want. Or if you want to create a saturation and a curve layer in one action, you can do that as well. And that kind of thing. So actions will save you a ton of time. Okay, so the only thing it didn't do, because I think I was fumbling, was it didn't create this correctly. So I think I had this as, I think that was green and that was yellow. And that was just because I think I undid it and it maybe got confused. Right? So then I'd have to just do that manually, but it did everything else correctly. It created this, and this is our wires and cables layer, and this is our group. And you can see it did the same exact thing as this, right? This is, oh, let's put it over here. That is the healing, which we haven't touched, but there's your wires and cables, and that's the original image. Non-destructive process, right? Because you're working here and sample all layers was selected. Okay. And then if you wanted to mess with the curves, you can come in here, do that. If you want a nice black and white, there you go. And then you can just strategize on how you want each of those images to, to be seen, right? So that is a little introduction into Generative Expand, Generative AI, the remove tool, and a little bit about actions. So, any questions so far?
Yeah, Eric, I have a question on generative expand. And what I do sometimes, well, here's the example. I was over in Dallas County, that's Adele, and I shot a nice photo of their courthouse. I got back to my house and thought, that would look really nice printed off, 11 by 14. Well, guess what? When I crop it, that I'm chopping both sides of the courthouse off. Well, could I use generative expand to make that image into a 11 by 14?
So, generative AI, from my understanding, you'll get a sharp image if it's around 1,000 pixels, from my understanding as of right now. And that's what I've read online so far, is that you can, so say this image is, let's see what this image is. This image is, 5,000 by 3,700. So figure like a fifth wide is 1,000 pixels. Right. So if that's half, that's, a quarter, that's a fifth. So five y and that's 3,000. So a third less. So 1,000 by, well, I'll just make it simple for myself. You can just see 1,000. I think it's 1080 is, well, whatever that would, right? Just imagine I did this correctly and it's 1080, right? So 1080 would be the limit for generative fill to get sharpness. Now, with a specific building like that, be careful with AI because it won't maintain the integrity of the actual building. So just be careful with that. Not only is it a limitation of pixels, but also just the integrity of that building itself, if it's an identifiable building like a courthouse. Someone asked, is there a way to find a specific font? There is. I think I wanted to touch on that next time, but what I can do is actually show you a template that we have from a calendar. Right? They ask, how do you know what font this is? Can AI figure it out? So if I go into the marquee tool and draw a box with this marquee tool or the M key on your keyboard, draw a rectangle around text, and then go up to type and then go to match font. It's going to find the font, and I believe it's Roboto Bold is what this is. So then you say okay, and then when you click to create a, yeah, so here's Roboto. I don't know, I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Delete. And you can see that that's the font, right? It's different sized. Maybe it's more like, um, yeah, and then this color would be this color. And then, yeah, so you can use AI to create, to find that font if you're doing something. And actually, Photoshop, this new version can create some really cool stuff with fonts we'll get into next time. So just to reiterate, I would say don't be scared of AI. It's something that has been in the works for a long time, and it's something that can help your workflow. And if you don't understand actions, please book a session with me. I'm happy to slow it down, go over many things. And when you do buy a pack of actions, make sure it's better if you understand how to create your own actions, because then you can work better with somebody else's actions. If something goes wrong, you know how to fix it. So mess with the record button, record a bunch of processes, see how deep you can get, see what things work, what things don't. Just like you saw with my action when I was fumbling, I said, no, I don't want that to be the group to be magenta. And then it just decided, okay, I'm not even going to do the green and the yellow. I think understanding what I did wrong, if I were to do it again, instead of hitting undo, I would have actually undid the group as in hit none and then gone to the specific layer and said green and said yellow again. And then when I played the action, it would have worked. So when you understand the logic of how actions work, then your actions will be smoother. So it takes some time to get used to. They will save you so much time. I use them all the time. I mean, all the time. You can just see, like what I said about Cuba, you went and you don't like any of these wires. Hypothetically speaking, just create an action and apply it to all the photos. And you can even batch these things, which I'll show you next time, is you don't even have to open up each separate photo. You can just create an action, hit batch, and tell them what photos you want it to apply to, and you can just go out for lunch and come back and it'll all be done. So save you a ton of time. They are very helpful. So again, anything I can help you with, please connect mckennapro.com/coaching, and stay tuned for the next webinar, November 13th, and then December 11th. So part 2 is on November 13th, and then the tips for indoor portraits is on December 11th. So thank you guys for joining, and I will see you in the next one.